This is the story of Basin Electric Power Cooperative. It began May 5, 1961, and 50 years later it continues. It's a story of people helping people. It's a story of bringing electricity to rural areas. It's a story of leadership, innovation, and commitment. It's a story that will continue for generations. At one time, electricity was a city luxury. Rural areas ran on sunlight by day and wind charger batteries by night. Then in 1935, the new Rural Electrification Administration set in motion a series of events that forever changed rural America. It was the formation of rural electric cooperatives to energize rural America. For close to 20 years, rural electric cooperatives in the Missouri River Basin depended on federal dams for power, but by the late 1950s, the dams would no longer be able to meet the increasing demands for electricity. So rural electric leaders across the Missouri River Basin decided to build their own regional power supply, Basin Electric Power Cooperative. And what started out with a card table, a chair, and a checkbook in rented office space is now one of the largest generation and transmission cooperatives in the nation. In its 50-year history, Basin Electric has only had 3 general managers, and while each one faced unique challenges, all 3 kept one thing in mind: the consumer at the end of the line. Basin Electric's first general manager, Jim Grahl, talked about the challenges of forming a large power supply cooperative.
This is unique. This operation, this organization, is unique in the country. And when it was first undertaken and subsequent to the first loan being made, there literally were people around the region taking bets that it would never get off the ground.
But it did. In May of 1962, REA announced it would provide financing to build Basin Electric's first power plant, to be named the Leland Olds station. But without power contracts, a plant site, water supply, fuel supply, or a transmission contract, loaned funds would not be released. This then set in motion a flurry of activity to resolve each of these issues. The success of Basin Electric ultimately hinged on a significant factor: the ability to use an existing transmission system rather than building duplicate lines. And that even proved to be a daunting task.
This whole scheme depended upon cooperation between REA and the Bureau of Reclamation, and at that time, they hated each other.
Finally, after months of negotiations, a historic pooling agreement between the Bureau and Basin Electric was signed on November 29, 1962. It entitled Basin Electric to rent capacity on the existing Bureau transmission system to supply member cooperatives, the same cooperatives that were already being served by the Bureau from the dams. And it helped to release the required REA funds. The tenacity of rural people and the rural electric cooperative movement were the underlying forces that made Basin Electric succeed.
But the approach they took set the pattern for Basin Electric for years to come, and it's one which, as far as I know, Basin Electric has not forgotten. And that is that they created strength by numbers. And while individually they were small, when they came together in a big enough group, they had enough power and enough strength to get the job done.
It was the vision of Leland Olds, former chairman of the Federal Power Commission, that set the foundation for what Basin Electric became.
In June 1963, under the flags of 8 states to which the power from this new plant would flow, national and regional leaders broke ground for Basin Electric's Leland Olds power station near Stanton, North Dakota, named after the former chairman of the Federal Power Commission who devoted his life to protecting consumers' interests. Leland Olds urged the Great Plains rural electrics to join together to build giant plants from which their consumer owners would receive low-cost power.
In 1966, the aptly named Leland Olds station began generating electricity. It was the largest lignite-burning power plant in the entire Western Hemisphere. The member co-ops of Basin Electric were growing rapidly, and Basin Electric soon added a second unit to the Leland Olds station, twice as large as the first. Next, a peaking station in South Dakota, the Spirit Mound Station near Vermilion in 1978, then a 3-unit partnership with the Missouri Basin Power Project, the Laramie River Station near Wheatland, Wyoming, and finally the Antelope Valley Station near Beulah, North Dakota. The startup of Antelope Valley Station's second unit in the mid-1980s marked the end of Basin Electric's first construction cycle. In 20 years, the cooperative grew from 200 megawatts to more than 3,000 and from 2 employees to almost 1,000. From the beginning, Basin Electric's mission was to plan, design, construct, and operate the power supply facilities necessary to meet the growing needs of its member systems over and above what they received from the hydroelectric facilities. Even as a power supply cooperative, Grahl insisted that Basin Electric should be more than just a kilowatt-hour factory.
The main reason, in my opinion, that Basin Electric was so successful is that thousands of people, not only in the rural electric cooperatives, but thousands of people not in the rural electric cooperatives, worked together and helped because they believed that Basin Electric stood for something, that it stood for a lot more than just a kilowatt-hour factory. The policies and principles that the board and the membership adopted from the very beginning that were unusual in their breadth and their vision and their wisdom.
Jim Grahl served as general manager until 1985. He saw the cooperative through its building years. When Jim Grahl retired, Bob McPhail took the helm. McPhail came to Basin Electric from the Western Area Power Administration. And when he took over as CEO, the demand for electricity had reached a plateau, and Basin Electric had about 900 megawatts of surplus generation that wasn't needed, namely the Antelope Valley Station. The surplus wasn't a result of poor planning. A slow economy was blamed for the lower demand for electricity. Wholesale power rates were on the rise. McPhail was under tremendous pressure to curtail expenses.
Basin's rates were climbing a lot. When I came to the Bureau in 1973, the Bureau rate was 5 mils a kilowatt hour. When I left the Bureau 5 years later, it was 5.5 mils per kilowatt hour. So I had a one half a mil rate increase in the 5 years I was there. And then I come to Basin Electric, and it was like 50 mils a kilowatt hour, and we had to do one more raise after I got there, and it went to 56 mils a kilowatt hour. And it should have been 60 because we were holding things out of the rate base to hold the rate down as much as we could. But
McPhail concentrated on reducing costs, increasing operating efficiencies, and aggressively marketing surplus electricity. And by 1989, Basin Electric had reached a turnaround. Wholesale electric rates stabilized, Basin Electric settled into an operations mode, and focused on efficient business and power plant operations. Throughout the 1990s, Basin Electric's 3 baseload power plants were among the lowest cost electricity producers in the country and a source of pride for its employees and members. In the midst of this recovery, the cooperative was faced with a controversial decision, one that ultimately protected the cooperative family. In 1988, Basin Electric acquired the Great Plains Synfuels plant and the accompanying lignite reserves at the Freedom Mine. The Synfuels plant is the nation's only commercial-scale coal gasification plant, and it was developed by a consortium of natural gas companies. It started operating in 1984, just in time for natural gas prices to drop. The original owners saw the plant as uneconomical, so they defaulted on their loan from the Department of Energy and walked away. Basin Electric was watching closely. If the Synfuels plant had closed, Basin Electric would have lost $37 million annually in revenues, which would have been devastating to the cooperative, and more than 600 jobs would have been lost. So following a special meeting of the membership, Basin Electric won the bid to purchase the plant. On October 31, 1988, ownership of the Synfuels plant transferred from the DOE to Basin Electric's new subsidiary, Dakota Gasification Company. The coal mining assets were placed under another new subsidiary, Dakota Coal Company.
The announcement that they're about to announce is that they plan to offer the gas plant to Basin Electric. They told me the reason they come to this conclusion was not totally economic, although they said the economic offers were very, very close between the three finalists. But what kind of swung it was Basin had the strongest commitment to long-term operation for the coal gasification plant. And also we have a tremendous track record for operating large industrial facilities. And they recognize that we have an outstanding group of people. We've done a tremendous job over the years in building and operating large facilities like power plants.
The Department of Energy accepted Basin Electric's bid, given the long-term benefit to the country, including Basin Electric's commitment to not only share profits with DOE, but also to forego valuable tax benefits. Coupled with the unused tax credits, the purchase price, and profit sharing, DOE recouped more than $1.2 billion of its original plant investment of $1.5 billion. The Synfills plant and coal reserves proved to be good investments. The plant went on to serve as a firm source of natural gas for some of the cooperative's peaking power plants. Through McPhail's tenure as general manager, Basin Electric did not need to build power generation. Investments were made in fuel supply, power plant maintenance, and business efficiencies. By 2000, those investments had paid off. The average net cost of power would be just over 3 cents a kilowatt hour, and that meant rates dropped 37% since the all-time high of 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour in 1987. In December 1999, McPhail announced his retirement after 15 years as the cooperative's general manager. The board selected Ron Harper as his successor, the first time a manager from a member system had been hired as CEO. He was the general manager of Powder River Energy Corporation of Sundance, Wyoming. Harper took the helm in April 2000. The cooperative's new leadership found fresh challenges as the new century unfolded. Member cooperatives had been growing at a steady, predictable rate of about 70 megawatts annually. And with that surge in growth, construction and planning again had become part of the business dialogue at the cooperative. As Basin Electric continued to develop power supply facilities for its members, a baseload coal plant was always part of that effort. The Dry Fork station joined Basin Electric's generating family in 2011. It was the first coal-based power plant for Basin Electric in more than 25 years. Wyoming Municipal Power Agency of Lusk joined Basin Electric as a partner in owning the Dry Fork plant, becoming a 7.1% owner of the station.
Well, what you see here today represents an investment on the behalf of the Basin Electric membership and the Wyoming Municipal Power Agency's membership of over $1.3 billion in order to produce electricity for the growing needs of this region. Again, we're extremely proud of that. Of that $336 million are for environmental technologies that are required to meet the very stringent regulations set forth by the Wyoming DEQ, the state of Wyoming, and EPA.
Harper continued to advocate a balanced approach to developing a national energy plan along with renewable energy, nuclear, natural gas, biomass, hydrogen, and other fuels made from the nation's natural resources.
But when you look at, energy from a global perspective, you cannot discount one over the other. It's going to take all forms of energy to make certain we have adequate energy for strong economic development, whether it's here in the United States or anywhere in the globe. It takes energy to develop an economy and sustain an economy.
This measured, diversified approach to meeting member needs saw the cooperative through the first decade of the new millennium, which included the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. The next chapter of the cooperative's history begins with the retirement of the cooperative's third general manager. In April 2011, Harper announced he would retire at the end of the year.
As I've looked at the history as I've seen it at Basin, it always starts with that end game in mind. And we may run into things, and I know, the leaders of the past ran into many, many things as they started building Basin Electric back in '61 and even before then. But it was the tenacity of those leaders that said, no, we are going to succeed. We're going to burn lignite. And we're going to build the first lignite-fired plant that's of that size at that time. And we're going to make it work. If you have that work ethic, if you have that tenacity, and you know that your core value is based upon integrity, that's where success comes from. And if you treat people like you want to be treated, I mean, you can accomplish great things.
But it all comes down to that consumer at the end of the line. And what Basin Electric does affects them.
I'm glad to be a member. It's our business. We run it. We get to vote. But I think member-owned is what makes you feel good. Too many things are out of our hands and owned by somebody that lives thousands and thousands of miles away. And you kind of feel like you lose control when that happens.
The success of the past 50 years is founded in the cooperative membership's strength and unity. Unity built on a common purpose, unity built on trust and honesty, unity built on sharing risk so no co-op has to go it alone.
The Basin Electric Group overcame all of the problems and obstacles, and it has become, and here I don't think the people in this region quite realize it, it really is one of the great people's success story of this nation. There's no other cooperative that I know of, certainly not in the power business, that has done what the Basin Electric Group has done.
As complex as the Basin Electric system has become, it was built on a simple cooperative principle, people helping people to accomplish a common goal. And this is an overwhelming force. This is the strength we have to meet the challenges of the day. No challenge is too great that it can't be solved by working together with our member systems and our consumers from one generation to the next to produce affordable, reliable electricity.